Welcome back into another episode of Preacher in the Hat. As always, my name is Eric. Got Derek and Steve here with me. Happy to have you joining us again. As we sit this evening, we are on a Tuesday night coming out of a long weekend that was Memorial Day. And let me tell you, usually when you come out of a 3 day weekend, you come out of a 3 day weekend rested and ready to go. And we are in no such spirits this evening. The last week and a half or so, week, been dealing with sick kids, and then Michaela and I got sick at the house too. And then just like a weekend of recovery and like some sleep, and then maybe not so much sleep the next night. And then when we got in here this evening, we had a rough time getting some of our tech going, and we were up and running. But I just feel tired. So
Yeah.
I think, Derek, you're probably like in the exact same boat.
Yeah. Our kids intermingle quite often. So when mine gets sick, yours get sick,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So we've been dealing with that, and
So they've been
and
swapping it around quite a bit.
running
Well, they
around
always
all
do,
over.
every single time.
Always
Yeah.
do. And
The gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
I was explaining to a coworker this week. There's a couple of movies that my wife and I have been meaning to watch, and I was telling him because he had also had the same. He was like, "Oh, I've been meaning to watch those too," and so he asked me the next day. He was like, because I said I think we're gonna try to watch the first one tonight, and he was like, "Hey, so how's the movie?" I was like,
Didn't
"It
happen.
didn't happen, man." And so he's right now he does not have kids. I'm sure he will at some point soon, but so I went into the explanation there of plans versus what actually comes to pass.
Yeah.
when you're dealing with that, we've been trying to watch that movie for about probably 2 weeks now, and just haven't gotten around to it. One of the issues is it's more of like it's kind of a thinking movie, I guess, kind of complex. And so
Are you going to tell us what movie?
the movie is it's the sci-fi series, the Dune series.
Oh, yeah.
And I've heard that they're very like kind of can be a little bit tough to follow. So
So we watched the first one.
Okay.
And it was good if you like that kind of movie. But exactly what you're saying. And the second one came out apparently or whatever, and I was talking to Michaela. I was like, we're going to have, if you want me to watch the second one, we're going to have to watch the first one again, because I remember absolutely nothing of what happened.
And so therein lies part of the problem, because they're long movies. They're 2.5 hours, almost 3.
So this sounds like movies watching is work.
But you have to
always.
the kids have to get down for bed in good time.
You need them in bed before 8.
You need them in bed before 8, because then the movie's not, then the movie's over at 10:30, 10:45. If they don't get down, in time, then it's, 11 something past, and, you got work the next day. If it's a weekday, like, I'm not doing that. But then also once you do that, you get the kids down, you have to want to challenge yourself with a movie that you've got to think about. You know what I'm saying? Like, as opposed to maybe something that's not as complex. Even if it would be even different if I was just like, if I sat down after and was like working for my job, it would just be kind of different. But if it's something that I don't understand, that I'm sitting there trying to try to understand, to me, that feels taxing. And so it's like, I don't know when we're going to watch this movie. But parents of who've had young kids in the past, please help me. Tell me when I'm going to be able to watch this
Let us
movie.
know when can we watch movies again.
Well, they'll be able to tell you because kids are so predictable, so I'm sure
They're all the same. Every single one of them is the same.
Yeah.
All sets are the same. Yeah, no, and we just
I
have
just don't ever remember that ever being something that your mother and I discussed is when we're going to watch that movie.
Well, there were no streaming services, so if you were going to watch a movie, it was either on TV and you happened upon it, or you went to the movie.
you went to the
so
theater.
a little different.
yeah.
I go into movie theaters these days. There's hardly anybody in there.
Oh yeah. We actually went this past. So our anniversary was today. As we're recording today, it's the day after Memorial Day, and our anniversary was May 23rd. So it's like what's that? 5 days ago.
Yeah.
And so Friday night, we had originally planned to go to the movies Thursday night, and then Michaela got sick, and so we went on Friday night. But we actually did make it out to one, and it was like Friday night. It's to me, it's like where we went is like the best theater in Birmingham. They've got like the giant screen, it's the one down in Homewood, and there was. I mean, we probably saw, some people were in movies, yeah, but like our whole time there, we probably saw like 20 people in the building.
That's crazy.
Not many.
And there weren't many people in the movie with us, like that the one that we were watching, probably like a dozen, other people, something like that.
We usually go Fridays early if we go.
Well, we went Friday at like 6:30, which is
Yeah.
like getting
Go about-
into like prime time. And then when we got out, it's like usually late on Fridays. So I guess around that time, it was a little before 9. It was like 8:45. It would normally be packed, and the parking lot was some cars.
Kind of same way when we go.
The pandemic did a number on
Yeah,
that
it
kind of
really
stuff.
Yeah, it changed
Really
it.
did.
Yeah, but people probably just want to hear us talk about movies and movie going, the movie going
Yeah, since we're movie
experience
experts.
in 2024.
Let's
Yeah,
all list our top 20.
yeah.
I'm out.
I couldn't. I'm not that type of person.
Let's
Like
just cut the camera to them. I'm out.
I don't even know if you were like, "What's your favorite movie?" I'd be like,
Yeah, I don't know.
"I don't know." There's tons of them that I liked, but like I just don't.
They're never. It's
I
never
don't get in the-
apples to apples.
I don't get in the business of ranking them against each other.
The
So
Grinch.
no. So I mean, I can tell you that's no. I like
We've
that. movie.
already done
yeah,
podcast using the Grinch.
I like.
so.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I remember that moment.
Ah, yes, Whoville.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
but I've never gotten the business of like ranking them against each other. It's
Me
just too difficult to do. It's like how do you measure a movie like that versus like the other night we watched Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, they're not.
How do
it's
I
not
compare those two?
comparable.
How,
You can't say-
I cannot put those on the same list. It's just there's no way to do
nonsense.
that. Yeah. So we were talking about kids a little bit earlier, and we're gonna go back. We're gonna dial the sundial way back. Can you dial? You can't dial sundial back. You can't dial the sun
You
back.
have to dial the sun.
Anyway, so terrible effort there on my part. We're going to turn the clock back about 34 years or so.
Can Chris give us Can you insert a time machine sound there?
Okay.
All right,
yeah.
now
Call it
say it
Back to
again.
the
Now say it
Past.
again, so he can. So give him the opportunity.
We want to turn the clock back to 1990.
I didn't mean for him to do. He's
Thank you.
doing it off
Yeah.
to the side.
That's where he can insert it. Anyway, we're going to turn the clock back to around 1990. That was the year that Derek and I were born.
Yes, it was.
And we want to get into some stories that revolve around that time in your life. This was the intention of this was not to tell the story of when Derek and I were born necessarily. That's not the primary objective, but a lot of things seem to coincide within like a 2.5 to 3, maybe more than that year period for you guys, having moved from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham in 1987.
to Birmingham in 1987, January.
Yeah. So in 1987, which was with 2 kids, our older sisters, Shauna and Tanya.
We're 7 and 5.
Yeah,
when we moved.
in
Or roughly,
1987. Yeah.
1987.
And so so a few years later in 1990, that would have made them 9 and 7.
yeah.
But so give people like a kind of a quick recap. Let's go with a quick recap. As we hit 1990, how long you and Mom been married? We kind of already mentioned Shauna and Tanya there. Where you're living at that time. What the give us a brief recap on the move from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham. What you're doing in life at that time, and that's going to kickstart us.
Well, we moved to Tuscaloosa in 1984 when the girls were
Right.
4 and 2. And then we moved in 1987 to Birmingham. In 1986, right before we moved, we didn't know at first, but your mom was pregnant. And and this is pertinent to the story in that in 1986, one morning, I was awakened by her from in the bathroom, and she was startled in that she had had a miscarriage at home, and it was quite impacting because often when a miscarriage happens like that, you don't see the baby, but there was the baby.
Right.
And so it was like, what do you do about that? And so I went and buried that baby in a small matchbox. And so we had always thought we wanted a third child for sure. And so unbeknownst to us, she was pregnant. In fact, had not even been to the doctor yet. So she was close to 8 weeks, we found out then right after that when she had that. So it was after that time. She was fine physically as far as we knew, but we kept thinking we were going to have a third child, but we couldn't get pregnant. And so from 1986 and on on into living in Birmingham. And so we moved to Birmingham in 87. I worked for Prison Fellowship. I traveled quite a bit. And then when in 1990, no, I'm sorry, it would have been 89. In the summer of 89, I remember I was in Birmingham. I was traveling a little bit somewhere around in the city, and the thought came to me, what some people would say to me, they said, we know you got 2 great girls, and I did. Man, I love my girls. I mean, you guys got girls. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, like, it don't get much better than that. I mean, just don't get much better than that. And so I was satisfied with our girls and so forth. And occasionally people would say, hey, wouldn't it be nice to have boys? Don't you want some boys, Steve? And here's what I always used to say to them. At a time like that, I would say, well, yeah, I mean, it'd be okay, but I mean, I've never met a boy I would trade these 2 girls for. And they said, well, I ain't talking about that. Wouldn't you like to have it? So I'm driving along one day with that, somehow or another, those kind of conversations came to my head. And I had a strong impression from God that somehow or another in that thought process, as he told me, it's okay if you want a boy. I learned something about desires right then, guys. I learned something about desires. I was thinking about that today when in preparation for this. And I thought about, it became a desire in that moment when I was driving along that road. It became a desire for me to have a boy, but it didn't become a goal. It was not really a goal. It wasn't like, okay, now I got to have a boy. It was like, it's okay to acknowledge that you would love to have a boy. And so I just said that out loud to God. I said, yeah, it would be nice to have a boy, and kind of let it like that. We now know from our perspective of history, looking back into history, that not only was one boy conceived, but 2 boys were conceived, and our time frame says it was probably within 2 weeks of that conversation I had with God in the car. And it happened after 2.5 weeks, because we had gotten to a point where we thought maybe we were just not going to have a third child.
Right.
We were already at that point, because there was about three years there where we could not get pregnant. And so we were resigned to that fact almost, and it was okay. But we were like, okay, maybe 2 is all we're going to have. So sure enough, we didn't know, obviously, then at conception that you were twins. There was twins. Nor did we know there were boys. But as it went on at 14 weeks, when your mama went in here in Birmingham, Alabama, I'm still working for Prison Fellowship and traveling quite a bit. But I happen to be here for the doctor's appointments. We go in at 14 weeks. And they find out that I'm with her at Shauna and Tanya are there, your sisters, and they call me to the back, and I walk in there, and they're doing the ultrasound on your mom, and she looks at me, she said, baby, there's 2 in there. I can't even tell you what kind of shock that was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was not even a thought of mine. You know, we thought about. Now you may or may not know this about your mom, but your mom at this same time, she was in the shower one time when she was pregnant. She knew she was pregnant. Maybe you heard her say, "I'll tell it
Yeah,
anyhow."
I've heard that.
And she said, "Oh God, it would be really great if I could have twins." And then she says, "But it won't. I know it won't happen." she
No,
was,
she tells it the way she tells it. She
What'd she
says,
say?
"But I know you won't do that.
you won't do it. That's right. That's right. I know you won't do that. She said, "What a woman of faith, right?" So anyhow,
You tested him, Mom.
she tested him. That's right. I know you won't do that. That's right. No, he won't do that. So it was on then. But at that moment, at 14 weeks pregnancy, of course, we knew there was two because there was two heartbeats. It was clearly,
Right.
distinctly, and I could see it on the screen. But it was 7 weeks later until we could find out the sex of the children.
Dad's story about finding out that it was boys is like it's like something, Chris. It's like something you would film in a movie.
It was.
We've told this on the podcast.
We have.
Have we?
We
Okay.
have.
Yeah.
We did.
That feels familiar.
We have.
We've told
Yeah.
that.
I'm in Mobile, Alabama, still traveling. Your mom's goes to the doctor. I get on a payphone outside of a convenience store. I call her collect, and it begins rain.
Yeah, it's
I'm in
raining.
a
Yeah, I was
suit.
like, that's the.
Chris, you already have an
suit
idea
coat.
for that in mind, right? I mean, we could shoot.
We
that
could totally
tomorrow.
just reshoot that.
Yeah.
That's right. So there you have it. And so I go back when she says it's boys, I'm hooting and hollering, and then I hang up the phone eventually when I say goodbye to her. I go back into the convenience store and I go, I'm going to have twin boys. You know, I'm like telling this cashier at some unknown
And they're
place. Yeah, okay. All right, Daddy.
Great.
But there you had it. And then what a pleasant trip home from
bet.
Mobile. And so when that happened, then here we are. I'm still traveling. I'm going, and I start thinking, is this what I want to do when I have not just two wonderful little girls that are still pretty young, they're 9 and 7. They're 9 and 7 at that point, just about, and then by the time you were born in April, they turned in June. They turned in June and July. They turned 10 and 8.
Yeah.
So they were almost 10 and almost 8 when you guys were born.
So as being like someone who has 2 kids right now, Derek, you do as well. What changes like when you're expecting a third child and instead it's like, oh wow, you're going to 4 now, like you're skipping 3.
right.
Oh, not skipping 3, but like you're kind of skipping 3 and going straight to 4. What's the like what goes through your mind when you talk about like doubling the number of kids?
If our
were
girls-
you gonna say something, Derek?
Yeah.
Well,
Go
so
ahead.
for me, it's really hard to fathom. I mean, I feel like it'd be a different feeling right now because, and maybe this is where you were about to go with your girls being 10 and 8.
Yes.
Like
Big
right now,
difference.
That's a good
I've
point.
got 4 and 1.
Big difference.
So
Big difference.
that just sounds like
Yeah.
Big
chaos, like just
It
pure
would be.
chaos.
It would be.
So
Perfect timing at 10 and 8.
yeah.
Girls excited about it. And they still love you guys today. I mean, it still shows today about how excited, because that's what they were just excited. And but you're absolutely right, Derek. If they had been 4 and 1, it'd been a completely different ball game in terms of that. But I will say this, is we heard over and over and over again, well, before we had twins and, as we had twins and since we had twins, is, it's always double trouble. Your mom and I never thought that. Either one of us never thought that. Because there were some ways that actually it was advantageous because of the way the two of you interacted with each other. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have to be a playmate for them, for you guys, in the same way that if you had twins first, or if you had a single first, you know what I'm saying? Or if there had been a third child, but not a fourth one. Mm-hmm. So that child would have been, would not have had that playmate at home with their older siblings being almost 10 and almost 8. Yeah. So in many ways, the adjustment was not big for us. I think the other reason it was not is because we had experience as parents. I think having
Sure,
twins
yeah.
first could have been a different story in
I
terms of how it would have impacted you
Yeah.
as parents.
Yeah,
that
Or
kind of
you're
thing.
just at least your initial perception.
That's
before you
correct.
came.
Yeah,
That's true.
That's right. That's right. So
Yeah.
so we were excited about it. It was a wonderful experience for us. Your mom, was on bed rest for the last 3 months of your pregnancy, of her pregnancy with you guys, and that worked out good too because your sisters just picked up. So one thing about the girls is I called a family meeting after we finally were pregnant, and I said, "Okay, we're gonna learn some ways you can help your mama because this is gonna be a little different story, girls." Those cutie pies, they came back to the family meeting. I called the family meeting, and it was like later that day. They come to the meeting with a clipboard and pen and pencil. And not only were they there to write down, they had already written down 12 ways that they could help their mama. And I'm telling you what, I said, well, this is cool. Read it to me. And they read it to me. And I'm serious. I mean, they covered like almost everything I would have even thought about. And I said, well, this family meeting didn't last long. You guys set the agenda, and there it was. So it was not only cool that we could find out ways they could help. It was really their ideas about how they could help. And by the way, that helps a lot down the road when they're doing it.
I bet. Yeah. So not a lot of people. This was of course 34 years ago, and now in 2024, a lot of people would probably not be as ready to consider to make big time career or work life changes because kids are born. You felt like that was necessary.
I did. It didn't take long after y'all were born in April that I didn't like it, that I couldn't be at home every night because I traveled all over the state of Alabama. My responsibilities were throughout the state. There was not a lot of Zoom stuff being done in those days. There was not a lot of that kind of
Bill Gates hadn't
communication.
figured that one out yet.
Yeah, he had not figured that one out yet. And we were so I did a lot of traveling. I would go to Mobile, I would go to Montgomery, Tuscaloosa, traveled all, in and out of prisons and that kind of thing. And I just did not like it that I could not be at home with you guys, because what was cool about having twins is that meant I got to feed one of you at night when I was there. Yeah. Whereas with the girls, they were single like that, as a single child, each coming in, mom pretty much took care of that. I would help some, but many times she was a stay-at-home mom by choice, and so she pretty much did that, But when there was two of you and we were bottle feeding, it was kind of cool. So I always loved having one, and we would swap up, from night to night. And I just got to where I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I thought, I call it prime time parenting. You see, to me, Eric, when you were talking about making career choices, you have to make, in my mind, even though I've been very busy and I've had a lot of jobs, as you guys know, and I don't mean that I haven't been gone a lot. I have some. But I always tried to stay focused upon that I'm in primetime parenting. In other words, I won't get this back.
Right.
It's going to be gone fast. And thank God I knew it ahead of time. I didn't wait until 10 years later and then go, ooh, I wish I'd have done that. And so I began to say, while I loved what I did, I made good money doing it, working for Prison Fellowship, the ministry Chuck Colson had started. I was the Alabama director for that. There could have been some other opportunities for me in that organization. I just felt like that I needed to come off the road while you guys were little, and not just wait till you were later. And so in the fall of that year, I was actually asked about with some local churches to try to help with them. And then I also thought, well, now what am I going to do? Because that was not a full-time paying job with the churches. I felt a call to that, but it wasn't a career switch, an even switch, because I was full-time with Prison Fellowship. And then I went and met a guy from UAB who said he wanted to hire me, but it was a 9 to 5 job. Then that worked great because that meant I could be home in the evenings almost every evening. I was not gone a lot unless it was for church work locally, but then I wouldn't be gone long in the evenings anyhow. And so I made that choice. I made that decision in October of 1990. You were born in April, and in October of 1990, I came off the road and was a home daddy. You might say, if that's a phrase. Who knows?
not.
we both looked at each other when he asked that question.
Yeah, I know. I figured he would. So why not? I mean, some daddy likes it, though, don't you? Some daddy, home daddy. Why not? Whatever. What's up with that? So, but when I say it's I knew it was right. I know it's the right thing. I knew then it was the right thing. I know now it was the right thing for me to do. I'm not saying everybody has to do it, but I know it was.
No, I know what you mean, and I know a lot of folks people who face that kind of stuff even now, and it's one of the reasons why I appreciate the kind of work that I get to do. That's that is really that 40-hour a week judge. It doesn't mean it never goes over that, it's like, but it's never working through till 9 o'clock and
well, years ago, guys, when we were talking about this, the higher paying jobs were traveling jobs the way I saw it,
right,
and at least in the fields I was in, in ministry, social work, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the jobs were in the travel. The bigger paying jobs were in the travel. The local jobs where you were doing that did not have the highest pay. And so and that was true. Like when I went to UAB, I mean, I don't even want to talk about how much I made or didn't make at UAB. I mean, it was pretty, when I look back on it, I was grateful for it at the time. I was very thankful for it. I got insurance, a lot of good benefits, but in terms of salary, in fact, the year that I changed, I lost $5,000 in salary the year I came off the road, just like that. That's a big amount when you were making back then. Of course, it was years ago, but when I had been making not quite 30,000, and I had to cut back to 25,000,
right,
with a family of 4 children, plus the 2 of us. So it was not a decision that became such a huge thing for us. In fact, to cut back that much when you add 2 kids doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So the decision financially did not make sense.
Right. That's like, I mean, if you kind of multiply that out, that's kind of like today, if you had a family income of $90,000, that's like dropping down to $75,000. And honestly, it's not something in today that a lot of people would be able to do, like that kind of percentage.
Especially because your mom had decided that she was going to be a stay-at-home mom. That's what she wanted to do. And so while she would do whatever she could from time to time to add to it, really the terms of the income, it rested on me. And that was true when y'all were born too, and especially when you were born. Because staying a stay-at-home mom, that was probably a pretty good idea with twins.
I was going to say, twins and 4 kids in total. I don't know what your options are.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You don't have as many options in terms of a career, at least not in the jobs we worked in, because she was in nursing, for example, which she didn't really want to continue in that career anyhow. So, when I think back on it, I think, though, that those decisions, not only were they right, not only did we survive financially, we were able to thrive financially, according to what I understood thriving. I realized that compared to some other people, it wasn't considered thriving. But one thing that it did help me do is stay focused not on what you can make, but on the call of God.
Right.
What's the call of God? Not only in terms of what job you have, but how that job impacts your family. I might just kind of jump forward for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Is when you guys were teenagers, young teenagers, I was offered a job. They said, give me, write your own job description and tell us what you need. It was in criminal justice. And it was while I was still doing church work too. And it was something I would have enjoyed doing quite a bit. And he was serious about that. And I prayed about it, I thought about it, but I looked at you guys, and y'all were about 13 years old. And I told him, after praying about it and thinking about it, I said, I used that phrase again. I'm in prime time parenting. Prime time parenting. I said, come see me again in 10 years.
Mm.
Never came to fruition for me. But I knew then that even though I could have wrote my own ticket, so you have to know it's the call of God, not just for ministry, but the call of God. What's the call of God for your family? Mm-hmm. Is some of the things I've learned, and for how you're supposed to be engaged in your family and in your family's life. I see you guys are sensitive to that already. You already do that. I see Sean and Tanya have done that too. But I'm grateful for that time in our lives.
Right.
And the things we learned through that process. And that remember that it also helped you to understand that God will supply all your needs.
Yeah.
He blessed us with you guys. He wasn't going to let us hang out there.
Yeah. I think that's what, and it's such a not basic, but really basic principle, to talk about how God will provide, for the things that he is, when he really wants you to go a certain direction. And we see that time and time again, over and over again. Yet I think for some reason, it's one of the toughest things, I think, for us to trust, because anyone else, even other Christians, and believers would tell you at times, maybe at a time like that a move like that is irresponsible. It's financially irresponsible. Mm-hmm. And so you're kind of battling, or we kind of conjure up this thing that we're battling. Well, I can't do something irresponsible for my family, because God doesn't want me to do something irresponsible. But maybe in his eyes, it's not irresponsible, but we kind of build this thing up to say, well, God wouldn't want me to do anything irresponsible. It's like, and to him, it's not, it's following the call, like you said.
It just struck me, Eric, when you were talking about that, is I don't remember asking anybody what their opinion about it was, other than your mother, who was gung-ho about it in a good way.
Yeah.
She loved it. But I don't remember asking, and I think it might have been for that same reason. I did not want to hear, because I was pretty clear in my mind what God was saying to do for my family and what he most wanted me to do. I didn't really have much question about that. So I think to have asked around, what do you think? You think I need to leave that job so I can go to this? Well, where are you going? Well, I don't know. How much money well, I'm not sure. How much, I know what they'd have said, but I didn't give them reason. There's a multitude of counselors. There can be safety, but in the multitude of counselors, sometimes when have the clear call of God on whatever you're supposed to do, the multitude of counselors, there can be confusion.
Mm-hmm. There definitely
because you're listening to their opinions, and they're coming out of their own fear. Sometimes I think about that. So it didn't mean I didn't care about what they thought, but I did not let it impact or even entertain very much what would happen next. So how has that impacted me from here on out? The way it's impacted me from here on out is to say, when years ago they used to talk a lot about pastor's children, who would go, and the pastor wasn't around, and the pastor didn't spend time with his kids. So people would warn me when I was a young pastor and when I was an older pastor, and you guys were older, not just you, but your sisters. Now, Brother Steve, be sure that you spend time with your children. This is how it impacted me. I would look at them and say, oh, don't worry. You say, your children need you. And I say, forget it. I said, don't worry about that. I said, because It's not just I'm spending time with my kids because they need me. I spend time with my kids because I need them and I like being with them. I like being with my kids. So the idea that learning to say, I like being with my kids, if I like being with my kids, you don't have to keep telling me to be with my kids.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be telling me to stay with my kids. And so that's one way it impacted me. It was like I never worried about that too much, and somehow I was going to go down some path where I didn't want to be hanging around with y'all, and y'all be sitting there like, "Where's Daddy? Where's this and where's that?" and that kind of thing. Now, if y'all ever did that, I don't remember it. Maybe did you?
No, I don't remember that.
I mean, like, well, the Dad's always out here.
I don't remember that. Even even thinking back to like baseball, and Dad was at a ton of games, but there were some you didn't make,
right,
occasionally. And I don't ever, even then, I don't remember thinking like, well, Dad, why didn't Dad make the game? I mean, you just kind of understood that.
Yeah.
It was understood that Dad was getting to as many games as he possibly could.
So,
and you also, I remember you moved things around so you could attend games, stuff like that. And I know attending sports games, that's just one basic example out of so many, but that's the one that comes to mind is like I never had.
I will say this: he didn't help me with any homework ever.
That's true.
Yeah, that's
what was that about? Well, y'all didn't need help.
No, we didn't watch it.
Neither did Sean or Tanya. That's what's. I hear parents talking about. They would say, I hear them say, "We have homework to do." I said, "Who's we?" The parents are saying we have homework to do tonight. I'm like, "Oh no, that'll never sit around our house. Not by the parents." We have homework to do. Honey, we don't have none kind of homework to do. The kids got the homework, so yeah.
He didn't.
Did it
I'm
scar you?
still working through that.
I'm
Yeah,
just saying,
yeah.
did it scar you? I'm sure it did.
All the homework you're doing these days by yourself.
Yeah,
now.
I'm still. So I go twice a week.
So,
therapy.
so will you have to do homework with Isaac?
No,
And Emily?
I mean, I know it's different now
It
the way
is,
the
it
stuff
is,
is set up and all that. so.
Sometimes teachers actually give homework, I think, where the parents are supposed to cooperate.
Yeah.
See, I never
kind of
figured
like
out.
learn at home
Right,
type
yeah,
deal,
yeah.
and so
There
you
may
know,
be some more of that.
so I don't know, but I mean, obviously we will. Our goal will be for them to learn how to manage their.
I think
stuff.
we got taught that because we couldn't just go home and Mom and Dad were going to walk us through it, or because the teacher already did that stuff, right? And so because of that kind of, maybe not because of that, but in sort of that same vein, I always ended up doing as much of it as I possibly could at school.
Yeah.
I remember.
all you
I remember
got.
my goal being every day was to come home without it.
Yeah. Do you remember the discrepancy in 5th grade where I had the teacher who believed in a lot of homework
Yes.
and you never had any?
I had a first year teacher. I had a first year
Elementary?
teacher in 5th grade.
Yeah, and she was like, it didn't really give y'all homework, and mine like loaded us up.
Thank you, Mrs.
I
Patterson.
forgot that.
Yeah. But I mean, I think some of it depends too, like whatever the kid's strengths are. Obviously,
that's right, that's true.
if you were going through thinking about how your parents helped you with homework because you needed help with homework, there's absolutely no, the thing we're talking about is the parents who like take it over and practically do the homework for them.
Or
That
we
was
have project to do.
Yeah, that was never going to happen with Mom and Dad. They were not going to do anything for you. For
I
us,
remember one time
that we didn't that they knew we could handle by ourselves.
Yeah, that's
in
right.
in 6th grade, I had to create an egg drop thing for like my technology class. I don't know what's technology class, what science and whatever. Forget what the class is called. And we had to do an egg drop. They would drop everybody's off the top of a building. And I procrastinated. And so I'd go to Mom like night before, I need to make
Boy, I
this
bet
egg
that was
drop box. And she was like, we'll try to find a box. And we found this box that was like tall, like for a, you want a nice like square box for an egg drop,
yeah.
and it was like tall and
yeah.
skinny, and it was like a box that can't, like a fish tank filter had come in it. And I didn't have anything to cover it up with, and it's like, and I started just like stuff an egg in there, like some stuff around it or whatever. And I remember like everybody's everybody's egg drop things were sitting on the top of the like on the teacher's desk in front. I'm like looking at all of them, and everybody's like kind of like neatly wrapped and stuff, like maybe even like wrapping paper on some, and I'm like, I really hope nobody knows that mine is in the fish tank filter box. And I remember he picked it up, the teacher picked it up, looked at it, and they had awards for like, best looking or whatever, and he's like, well, he said something like, well, I don't think that one's gonna win any awards. I was like, yeah, well. But that was, but it was one of those things where I was like, I'm not gonna wait. Like next time, I'm not gonna wait. Mom didn't bail me out, and so like I still so it sticks with me. And I did find like, they didn't grade off of like presentation and stuff like that. I made still got a good, the A and all that stuff. So it's what Mom knew what she was doing. But it's like it's that kind of thing still sticks with me. I learned from that, and it's like I'm not gonna play it that close again. And so it's like I appreciate, like, you grow. I think really feel like you grow up to appreciate that style of parenting.
Well, our earlier, about 2 episodes previously, or several episodes previously, we talked about attachment, and maybe this is a time to talk about it just briefly again in this moment. What would cause a dad to change jobs so he could be home more with twin boys and 2 young girls? Attachment. A sense of being attached, not attached to your job or to that job, but your attachment to the people in your life, And so I see some dads and I see some moms who work hard and they seem more attached sometimes to people outside their family almost, or the job or the goal or the vision or the money or whatever. And so part of it is when God binds the heart of children. It says in Malachi that God will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the children to the fathers. His prophecy was that John the Baptist and Jesus would do that. That's the last verse in the Old Testament. I'll turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and children to the fathers. So, guys, maybe it's fair to say that what Jesus did for me with y'all, just like he had done with your sisters earlier, that he turned my heart to you immediately. The hearts of because you just think, well, why would the fathers need to have their hearts turned to their children? Is because there can be a lot of other attachments that get in the way,
Yep.
And why would he have the hearts of the children and be attached to the father? Is because children too can wander that way. And so that attachment, we get to nurture it, we get to increase it, we get to do it. And just like Tina and Chris said about their attachment to Jenna Hope, is not just true and necessary for children. There's not an automatic bond because a child is born biologically to you. There's a spiritual connection.
That's true, and I've noticed that even just with both of our first 2 kids, not that it took me long to bond with our kids, but I think about, like, with both of them, how much quicker, you talked about it not being automatic, how much quicker their bond was with Michaela.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons being, she's, feeding them in the middle of the night.
Well, there it is. The science there actually is.
Yeah.
science about attachment between like
right.
mom and
Right.
baby.
Exactly. Exactly. And so it's like right there. And like for me, I really felt like it was with Nate, it was for me. It felt pretty quick. It was, I don't know, a couple of months to where it really felt like that. I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah, right.
And for Sadie, I would say it probably felt like a little bit longer. She didn't have. Nate had some feeding issues that she didn't have, and so she was able to handle all of that with Michaela. Sadie was, and so I didn't help nearly as much with the feeding with Sadie as I did with Nate, and I felt like that was like one of those things that really like bring that bond together. But it's interesting that you mentioned that too, because it's not just automatically there.
And it's not always automatic with moms, even though there's some science about it's biologically there, supernaturally and spiritually. There's not always that bond, even though there can be another bond as far as the mom is concerned. That's why I think attachment must be intentional. It's not automatic. And I think sometimes Tina didn't figure it was going to be automatic with the girl they were going to adopt. And I think we as parents across the board should not assume it will be automatic between mom and child or father and child. Because I've known some moms that did not bond with their kids and did not attach to their kids. I've known that. I've seen it as a pastor. I've watched it. And it's a painful thing to watch. But it's just as painful to see that dads do not bond immediately with their children either. And I think we have to be intentional about it. And it's an exciting thing, but we have to allow ourselves and not just think it's just the mom that's to be attached to the children. Dads, step up to the plate and realize, I need to be attached. Turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and God will do that. And Jesus will remind you that that's what's most important, is because that attachment is what will bring joy in your relationship as you go on. As a father and a son, fathers and sons, fathers and daughters, fathers and children. It's a wonderful experience. And y'all both experienced it, and you know it is, but it's not automatic. So let's don't let the world teach us that it's automatic. Boy, I brought you into this world, and all that kind of stuff, and those kind of ideas they're really arcane and old, honestly, when people use it. But if we're not careful, we can't assume that. Of course, the child knows I'm attached to them. I'm their parent. Wrong answer.
Yeah, I remember thinking about that with kids, and you hear so many stories of people who talk about how I was this age, or I was that age, or I never heard
That's right.
my dad say I love you. It's like, for some people it was like, oh, I was 12. Oh, I was 19. I was fully grown. Or it never happened for me. And I remember that being something that I was like, I have to tell my kids that every single day.
Yes.
Like that's what I'm going to do, because if I love my kids, and I very much do, then I'm going to make sure that gets expressed.
I just heard an 80-something-year-old woman tell me that when she would hear my dad on the phone say he loved us, she realized that growing up, she never heard her parents ever say I love you. Now these were responsible parents who raised her and quite a few other kids, but she said, I always missed that. She said, I never heard I love you from my parents. It wasn't that she didn't think it happened, but I can tell you I've had a lot of men that I've worked with who would just long to have heard their daddy say one time what you say to your son every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, their numbers are legion. It's not just an occasional one. It's not just an occasional person I find here, but I find it throughout that idea of not saying I love you and nurturing that attachment is not rare. I think it's plentiful way too many times.
Mm-hmm.
It's an absence that's very hard to overcome. But expressing the attachment is important. Not just experiencing it, but expressing it. So, I was attached to you all in 1990. I think I'm still attached to you in a different kind of way.
We're all sitting here in the same room.
We're in the same room.
2024.
Well, look, what are we doing? We're talking about all this stuff. How cool is that? It's really cool for me.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you sharing the backstory
Yeah.
on some of this. So it was really cool to hear it. I know, Derek, you and I have heard a lot of what Dad shared tonight a bunch of times, but it's kind of cool to group everything all into one conversation. There's some stuff that stories that I've heard a bunch over the years.
Well, I will close with this. The one way that y'all expressed your attachment to me when you were 3 and 4 years old is you would sit in the back seat and both of you would watch how fast I was going in the car.
Slow down.
And you were telling me at 3 and 4 years old, y'all were telling me to slow down. And I noticed it when we're going to Atlanta to the ball game and back. You're still trying to tell me how to drive.
Except this time
but it didn't start now.
This time we're trying to get you to speed up.
See, that's the problem with
I'm tired of
the problem with these children, Mr.
You're
Producer.
sitting there in the back seat and
You can never please them.
car's
1
just
minute you're going too
whizzing
fast,
by you.
and the next minute you're not going fast enough. It is the story of my life, and I'm in counseling for it. Thank you very much. Or like the guy said, and when he was in Atlanta, he said, "Everybody there loves me. They all think I'm number one. You figure it out."
We may have gotten a few number ones on the way over.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm not sure. Oh, man. For Derek and Steve, Chris behind the cameras, my name's Eric. This has been Preacher in the Hat, and we'll see you next time.